So today we've invited some current students, alumni, and professionals to speak about mental health and why it is an important issue to address. Some of the speakers will be sharing their own stories, and some of them will be, or all of them will be participating in a question and answer session at the end of the discussion. So if you have a question, again, just write it down on your note card anytime and raise your hand. We'll come get it from you, and we won't announce who wrote it down on a note card, so it'll be anonymous if you want.
So we hope that this panel will help open doors for us to start talking about mental health as students, talk to our parents, our counselors, our teachers, because one 50-minute period isn't enough to tackle this entire topic. But we hope that the perspectives and the insights that these panel members can offer you can help you maybe cater to your own mental health better and reach out to your peers and the students around you who might be struggling as well. So to kick off our event, we're going to have our first three panelists introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about why they're here.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Ogundeli, and I'm here from Stanford University Center for Youth, Mental Health, and Wellbeing. I am an immigrant. I am originally from New York. I've only been in California for 2 years. I have my degree in social work, and I came here today to help normalize mental health and reduce the stigma, and to hopefully open a conversation around the very complex issue of mental health.
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Liu. I'm a graduate alumni from class of 2010. Yeah, I'm old. So just to set the stage, I've never publicly spoken out about mental health issues for myself, so I'd appreciate confidentiality, like when you talk about me, say this woman, this lady, not Leslie Liu. In high school I struggled with anxiety and depression, and it got worse in college, and I was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2014, and I'm passionate about empowering people to take control of their life and find happiness through accomplishing their goals and fulfilling their dreams. I really mostly just don't want anyone to suffer like I did, and the worst feeling is feeling alone, feeling like no one understands you, like you can't reach out for help. And, suicide is such a sad and sometimes preventable happening. So I would like to be a resource here for you to ask any questions and learn about mental health, not only for yourself, but for people you know and care about. Thanks.
So, hi everyone, I'm Brandon Doe, and I'm a junior. This is a little difficult for me to say because I see some familiar faces in the room, but I've been suffering and fighting from depression for a little over 3 years now, and the reason I'm here is to speak for those who can't speak for themselves, because I can't sit around knowing that there's people out there, people like you, who have felt the way I felt, and when all they needed was just a little love, and because that's definitely what I needed. And so in a way, I'm sitting up here for those who need it the most and those who need a little bit of love.
Hi, my name is Dr. Helen Su. You might see me floating around sometimes. I'm the supervisor for our school-based programs at City of Fremont, Youth and Family Services. So we have a counselor on campus here each year and also throughout the city and in various other schools. I was told some of the youth especially have seen me as a consultant on 13 Reasons Why as well. And why I do all this work is I feel I'm very lucky that I have a job that I absolutely love, because I feel like in a lot of ways I've gotten to be the person that I probably needed when I was very young. And as an immigrant from Taiwan, growing up with bicultural parents and all the struggles that went on with my own identity, and just communicating with my parents who had no idea what high school was like in this country at all, and the struggles that we had, and that there's a depressive component in half of my family, and really struggling to understand that and not getting a lot of support or understanding. And so having eventually taken a very crooked path, but basically wound up going to UCLA, which was my dream school, and getting to do work that is exactly what I had hoped that I could be able to give what I had needed when I was in school. Not only not having a lot of support, I was fortunate that I did have some support. I found teachers and community members who were supportive and encouraged my resilience. But I think we could do a lot better job as a community about doing that. And in a lot of my work now, I also work a lot with parents, a lot of your parents in the community, really trying to help parents understand more what are the pressures that many of you are facing, and how to be more supportive and less judgmental, or how to not avoid topics about mental health, which I think a lot of really well-meaning, caring parents just avoid because they're pretty freaked out and they don't know what to do or what to say. So it's kind of what I'm here, and that's what I do all the time at work.
Hi, my name is Noah Kretchmer. I graduated in 2013. And the reason that I wanted to come here today, I wanted to kind of destigmatize openly talking about these things in a very, public, open setting, and also to kind of help other people realize that, mental health is something that affects everybody, whether or not someone is suffering from a mental illness or not. It's still something, mental health is something that is, just as important as physical health, and that it affects people, of all walks of life and all different careers. So after I graduated, I moved to LA, where I went to college. I went to a performing arts college. I'm an actor. So I moved from what I thought was a, very competitive environment, this school, as I'm sure everyone here can agree with that, to a very, very cutthroat town and a very, ruthless industry and university. The moving to LA is kind of known for being a very machine-like town, and the truth of the matter is that it's a city that really thrives off of the failure of many, many, many people. And it's a sad fact, but it is something that everybody who moves to LA knows. So the college that I went to knew this, and they tried to kind of gently reflect that in how the structure of the school was to prepare us for this industry. A lot of people dropped out after a couple of semesters there, because having a bunch of 17, 18-year-old, wannabe actors, not teaching them that the odds of them making it are essentially zero, there's no point, because if they go out and expect everything to be handed to them on a silver platter, they're not going to make it. So my school had a lot of very severe rules in it. Every day would be a 15-hour day in very active classes, and this was before rehearsals if you were in a show. They had a very strict absence policy. If you missed one class 5 times, you failed. That's it. And obviously, if you fail a class, you can't graduate. And what this instilled in the people who did go through the entire time at AMDA was a very strong sense of discipline, which is something that Mission also implements in its students. So diving into that lifestyle, being used to 15-hour days of always being busy and always having something to do, when I graduated, my school was set up so that there was a 2-year program, and then if you wanted, you could go back and get your degree. So I did the 2-year program, took a break, and then got my degree, my bachelor. So when I did that 2-year program, I graduated from that, and I had a break. And suddenly, I had so much time and not much to do. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And I fell into this really bad kind of routine of being fidgety and angry. I was angry all the time for a reason that I couldn't place. And, all of that kind of subsided when I did eventually go back for the 2 semesters I had left at AMDA before I got my bachelor's. But, I recently graduated in February, and I was really nervous that this would happen again, that I would kind of fall into idleness, which is something that I am very against. I think idleness is a really dangerous thing, and I think that a lot of mental health problems can be maybe not solved, but definitely made better by being active and by doing anything with your time to kind of keep yourself mentally and physically going, so that you're not sitting around, which is very easy to do. It's very easy to wake up, move from the bed to the couch, and then eventually from the couch back to bed. It's really easy to do that, on a weekend and when you have a lot of time off. And it's just a matter of picking yourself up and doing it. And I want to finish off by saying that a lot of people feel very alone in their mental illnesses, and I think it's really important to know that not all of these battles are meant to be fought alone. If you look throughout history, no battles are fought alone at all. They're always fought with a team or with an army, And so if you find yourself feeling alone in your mental health issue, it's can do you no wrong. Nothing wrong can come out of going out and finding your team, because it'll help you. It'll help you more than most things will. Yeah.
Oh. I thought that's what we were doing. Okay. Hi guys. I'm Anna Singh. I'm a senior here, and I just wanted to say before I begin, I'm not used to talking about this. I've only talked about this once before, and that was in first period. So. So if at any time I'm talking too fast or I say something that you don't understand, somebody just raise their hand and let me know, because I have no idea. Okay. So another preface to my story is that there is a lot of mental illness in my family, and for most of my life, I kind of saw it as like something that was happening to them. Like, I didn't think I would be susceptible to it because I never had any symptoms until towards the end of my sophomore year and the beginning of my junior year, I started getting really depressed. And it almost seemed to have started with the first day of junior year, which seems kind of crazy, but if you're a junior or senior, you kind of get what I'm talking about. So the first few months of junior year were really hard for me. I was taking a lot of weighted classes, and it wasn't just school that was making me depressed, it was a bunch of other things too, but school definitely didn't help. And then I was in a car accident, and I had to be out of school for 3 months because I had a brain injury. And I'm a really extroverted person, so being at home alone for 3 months was pretty torturous, and it just made my depression a lot worse. And when I was depressed, I would basically just lie in bed almost all day, not even thinking about anything. Like, I would just be empty. I would feel like somebody had took like an ice cream scoop and like scooped out my feelings. That's a weird analogy. But I would just dissociate and not think about anything. And the only real way I occupied my time was by watching Netflix, which is not a good coping mechanism. Anyway, so I came back to school, and I started interacting with my friends more, definitely got to talk to people. And my depression, like, it came and went, but it generally got better. And then I started senior year, and senior year was the year of anxiety. Thank you. I started to get really anxious, especially around college app season, because before then, I'd never really been anxious about being at Mission. I kind of just, worked my way through any anxiety I felt. But college was something like, it was so far in the future. Like, you apply in November through January, and you hear back 5 months later, and then 5 months, you're kind of just waiting there. So I started to get really, really anxious. Everyone around me was really anxious. And it was just like a really bad environment for me. And again, it wasn't just school or college apps. There was other things going on as well, but it was really overwhelming for me. So it did get better with time. I did learn how to deal with it healthily. So some things I tried at some point when I had my concussion and my brain injury, my doctor gave me medication. Part of it was to help with my mood because she was really worried about me, but part of it was also for my brain. I did go to therapy intermittently. I went for a few months in junior year, then I felt better, so I stopped. And then I went in senior year again because my doctor was really worried about me. But a larger thing I used to help me was my support system, which was my friends. And I also started writing in journals and things. So whenever I got really anxious, like I did here, I wrote down stuff or I just scribbled until I felt better. And I think that if you're a quieter person, that helps. The reason I'm here is because I really want to help people, anyone in the audience who feels like they need it. I think there's a lot of really smart people here, and we're all here to help. And all of us, you can talk to us after the panel. You can talk to any member of the team, and we're all just here to help you. We're trying to make Mission a better place. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to our question and answer session. So first, I just wanted to say again, if you have any questions whenever anybody is speaking, just write it down on your note card and raise your hand, and somebody will come get it from you. Okay, so our first question is from something last period of what are your thoughts on self-diagnosis? Is it good? Is it bad?
So thoughts on self-diagnosis, main one is don't do it. Just because it can be really dangerous. I was kind of in the opposite boat almost. I didn't want to believe I had depression or anxiety. Like my doctor forced me into therapy basically. Well, no, not forced, but she really wanted me to go through it. But I do know cases of self-diagnosis, and that's really dangerous because it's really hard for someone to see their symptoms the way they are, because if you're examining yourself, you kind of have a skewed perspective. A medical professional can actually provide better insight, which is why I'm going to let her talk.
Wait, really quick. I just want to add that although I agree with what you said about, try to stay away from self-diagnosing yourself. However, I do believe that if you are feeling a certain way and you don't know, you're confused about what you're feeling, researching and, finding a couple of maybe potential explanations and then taking it to a professional, I think would be beneficial. You don't have to keep yourself completely in the dark. And I think it can be healthy to, take some semblance of self-awareness and use it to educate yourself before going to a professional.
Right, so I totally agree with what they had to say. One thing that I'd like to bring up is that a lot of mental conditions can be hard. It's a little vague, right? So the symptoms, you might think like, for example, depression, sleeping more, overeating, and things like that. But those can be confused with, just sadness or grieving. Like if someone important to you died recently, maybe it's not depression. So a lot of times it can be confusing. Like even with me, bipolar disorder, there's this side that's like, oh, you're like manic, which is like super happy, like overactive, super ambitious, lots of projects. And then there's the depressive side, which I'm sure some of you are more familiar with. But it's hard because when you look at it, you might think, oh, this is totally me. But a professional can help you really differentiate what's your personality versus an actual condition, and also let you know, okay, well, you've had these depressive symptoms for the past 2 weeks. Maybe we should talk about that and take some action.
I'll just say briefly, I think it's great. I'm all for data. It's great for you to read about conditions and to arm yourself with knowledge for yourself and the people around you. And I know there's a lot of things online now, like take this quiz and, it'll tell you if maybe you have some like problematic things. And it's good to take those, but then take them to a professional, because there's just so many confusing things. Like maybe when you're manic, you feel great. So you don't think you have an issue, or maybe you are really depressed, but you need to make sure that you don't have like a thyroid disorder or something else that might also be causing things. So a lot of this can get really confusing, and a professional can help you sort out the actual answers that you do need, because there are things that could be signs of something else, and I've had the privilege and the sadness of working with people who maybe had their first major psychotic break, so really severe mental illness, and so they were really not in a place that they could like sort of self-reflect or figure out. And so, a professional would try to look at everything. They would look at the information you bring, if you filled out a quiz, your own self-report, but they'd probably want to know too, how are you looking and acting to your family, to your teachers, all those things, and what's your health like, and screening to make sure there's not something biological that might also be contributing to the disruptions in your mood.
Okay, so for our next question, maybe two panelists can answer this. What would you say to students who are suffering in silence with a mental health issue?
Secrets really can do a number on you, regardless of the secret, especially if it's a secret about your overall well-being and how you're doing. And so I recommend that you find a trusting person, a trusting adult that you feel like you can, even if you don't tell them exactly what's going on, you can give them a taste of what's going on, test to see whether or not, they're available to offer you some support. And if not, then test somebody else and see who can open themselves up to actually be available and to listen and hear what you have to say. Oftentimes I think that we as people, as young people, think that we're the only ones going through whatever it is that we're going through. And so it's not until we start to share what's going on with us as individuals when we realize that we're not alone in whatever it is that we're going through. So I'd recommend don't keep the secret. And if you keep the secret, just keep it for a day. Don't keep it for too long. Long secrets really can do a number on you.
Does anybody else want to answer that question?
So I do agree that keeping secrets is not necessarily a healthy thing, and it's also healthy to consider that mental illness is something that is not rare. I mean, no one's alone in this, and it's something that is often looked upon as strange. I mean, there's a stigma around it. But I mean, opening up about it is probably one of the hardest things to do, but just know that there's people like me and other speakers here who've gone through what you've gone through. And so it's not a bad thing. It shouldn't be embarrassing, and talk about it if you need to.
Okay, the next question is from someone in the audience. Some people see depression or mention of depression in their friend circles as signs of weakness or overreaction. How does one deal with the normalization of jokes like, I failed this test, I want to kill myself, lol, LOL?
Well, I can't speak to things which are just about maturity. But, really, the slogan is the more you know, the less you judge. We're talking about 1 out of 5 Americans who are at some point in their life going to have some kind of struggle or symptom, and that most of these are not lifelong conditions. Sometimes they are, but that it's just something that happens like any other health condition. And so the more you actually educate yourself, a lot better that is. I think a large part of what everyone is trying to do here is to talk about not only knowing how to get support and help for yourself, but for the people that you care about. Because in a group this size, I guarantee you that you may have lost somebody already to suicide or who is really deep in their illness or symptoms right now, or I absolutely guarantee that you will. That 1 out of 5 people is a lot. And so someone you care about may need help. And we need to work to be a community, a school climate community, but also in your own cultural communities, whatever, that fights stigma, so that the people around you, if they're suffering quietly and they don't know what to say, but that they see you as someone who will put an end to a joke or who will make it known that if anybody happened to need help, you would be there to try and be supportive and try to find the accurate information that could help someone through whatever it is that they may be going through, and to get the tools.
Yeah, so I think that question kind of touches on the point where a lot of people see depression as a sign of weakness or even laziness. And I think that as we're progressing, we should try to have some more understanding, some more empathy, and some more non-judgmental conversations about this kind of thing. Depression is a medical disorder. It's not just in your head. It's not like a light switch where, oh, just be happy. It's not that simple. And in terms of that kind of joke, if a friend of mine said, oh, I just failed this test, I want to kill myself, I would be like, oh my gosh, so-and-so, are you okay? Is everything okay? And how can I help you, So yeah, it could be a joke and you don't want to put them on the spot, but maybe when you're with them by themselves, just checking in, because you never know what could happen when someone makes an impulsive decision that they'll regret.
So, growing up from depression, I've learned that, most people might think that, that depression doesn't really happen often. It doesn't occur to many people. But you never know. When you say something like that, you never know that the person sitting next to you might be, feeling that way. They actually do have suicidal tendencies. So, considering that we're so young, it's good to know now that there's many people out there who are silently suffering, and those jokes being made, it's thrown around like, oh, haha, but in the end, you never know. It, like I said, it could be the person next to you who's really taking that in seriously.
So for the next question, maybe 2 or 3 panelists can talk about the experience of calling a suicide hotline and whether this can be helpful or useful for high school students.
Okay. I guess I'm the only one who's called a suicide hotline. So from my experience, honestly, it can be hit or miss. You don't know who's going to be at the other line. Sometimes I've talked to people and I'd be like, okay, what you just told me made me feel worse. But sometimes they can actually be really helpful. It really depends. There are a lot of different hotlines. Like there's a national suicide hotline. There's like a warm line. I know there are certain like texting services or like online where you can like type to them. And I work at Kaiser. I'm a Kaiser member, and they have their own crisis line for that. So sometimes I call the crisis line and I can talk to a counselor who will help me. And what's really helpful is that if I'm at a breaking point, like when I'm breaking down, when I feel like things are spiraling out of control, this person can talk to me, calm me down, and even give me some insight on action steps. So, with the situation, what can I do now? What can I do tonight? What can I do tomorrow? And just have someone there to understand when I don't feel like my friends might understand, or I don't want to bother them, or they're too busy. So these people are really there to support you. And, don't be discouraged if you have one bad call. I know the suicide hotline is more for when you're like actually in crisis and about to commit suicide, but I just call when I'm in crisis, like crying. So, it can be helpful, and, they do their best. Yeah.
Okay, our next question is, what should you do when you have a friend or think that a friend is going through depression?
Okay, so this is a really good question. There's a lot of different things you can do when you have a friend who you think is going through depression, but the most important thing is to not force them to do anything. Don't coerce them into telling you, or don't put any kind of pressure on them for anything like that, because that'll most likely make them feel worse and most likely make them feel like they can't trust you. What you can do is start the conversation yourself. I was someone who really did not want to talk about my mental issues ever. And my friends got me to open up by telling me some issues that they were having. And I would be like, oh, I can relate so much. And then I would tell them a little bit. So definitely making them feel comfortable and feeling like they can talk to you is a big one. Another thing is just being there in moments of crisis. Like, I know there's some friends I can count on when I'm having issues at the moment that I can just text them and they would never judge me. And that's like a really big thing for me, because some people don't have those friends. So if you want to tell someone that you'll be there for them, you just tell them straight up. Like, that's the easiest thing to do, I think.
I would first start by saying, try not to diagnose your friend. If you see that your friend is not being their normal self, like what you're used to, let them know. Like, hey, is everything okay? I noticed that this and this and this is going on. Because then that's a signal to your friend to say, oh, is something really going on with me? what's happening. It's an opportunity for them to say, well, I'm really stressed out, or I'm really overwhelmed. So try not to diagnose your friend. Really see your friend as a person that is maybe sad, or think about the context. What could my friend be going through? Your friends talk to you. You hang out with your friends. Did they have a rough exam this week? What's going on? Think about the whole person, and just don't think about like the symptoms that you might be seeing. Sometimes we focus a lot on the sick part of people and not look at the whole person. So look at the whole person, and try not to look at people as just being sick.
So for the next question, again, maybe two panelists can answer it. What should you do if you try to confide in people, but they accuse you of using your anxiety or mental illness as an excuse or a safety card?
That person's not your friend. Drop that friend like a bad habit. That's completely, there is no reason, and I understand, this is high school, and everything social is super important. But if you've gathered up the courage, and it is courageous to confide in someone, and they respond in that way, that person is not only apparently very ignorant as to how mental issues work, but that's just not a cool thing to say, like, at all, and that is a time when you realize that this person is not your friend, because a friend would never say something like that. It's a really, really quite terrible thing to say. So honestly, I would just, like I said, just drop them.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate on this, and people probably won't like it. But from my experience, I've noticed that sometimes I feel more helpless than I actually am. Like, I am playing victim sometimes. Like, oh, I'm so depressed. Like, no one understands me. Like, and then I do talk to my friends, and they're too nice to say something like that. But maybe whoever said that didn't mean it that way. They just meant like, Leslie, I think you're stronger than that. How can I support you, right? So I think it is important to see that. So it's really hard for people who don't experience it themselves to even grasp what you're experiencing. So sometimes they say things that are stupid or that hurt, that they really just don't know. But if they really are your friend and they're saying something like that, having a conversation with them to let them know, hey, I'm not trying to use this as a safety card. I just really do feel down. Maybe you can help me. Maybe we can go do something fun to get my mood up or something,
So personally, I've never been on the receiving end of something like that. But I mean, if you've ever said that, not only is it, like Noah said, that it's not cool, I mean, it's in fact very dangerous if you say something like that. That person at that moment when you said that may seem like he or she is coming up with excuses or, trying to slack off on something, but, consider that it might be serious and, their life might be on the line, and you've said something that has brought them closer to that line. So watch what you say when you're talking to someone who's saying those kinds of things. Yeah.
Just really quick, in earlier panels, somebody brought up that if you're like a friend or supporter of someone who's having mental illness, you need to make sure you're okay too. So if you ever feel like you're going to have like an outburst or you're going to say something like this to someone, just maybe take a step back, like take some time to like relax and then go on with it, because it is like hard to constantly be there for someone, but that doesn't mean you get to say things like this to them. So yeah.
Really quick, if you ever, have this thought of, is my friend playing the victim card? Are they using their mental illness to do anything? Think about, you have two options here. If they are playing the victim card, would you rather have a friend that's doing that, or would you rather drive that friend to do something that they might regret? Because, and of course those are the two extremes, but I don't think it's in any way, shape, or form worth, the negative extreme. I would personally much rather have a friend who is, who uses their mental illness. And I know that this is not, a thing that often happens, or a healthy thing for people to do, or a fair thing for people to do. But I would rather have a friend that does that than have a friend, God forbid, do something, like take their own life because of something that I said personally.
And really quickly, if you are the person who has been told these things and you are suffering yourself from, a mental illness, I just want to say that, we're all up here with open arms to be the one to talk to you. I mean, those people who've said those things to you, they're not there to support you. It's clear. They've made it clear. So, that's what we're here for.
Be our friend.
So we've gotten a lot of follow-up questions from the discussion that just happened of what do you do if it's your parent that has said something like that? How can you just drop your parent?
Whoever that is, if I knew, I would tell you. I can't tell you how many times I've told my parents, hey, I'm like really anxious and stressed about it. And my mom was like, why are you so stressed, beta? Just like, don't be stressed. I'm like, wow, I should have thought of that. So I'm sorry if your parents said something like that. But there are definitely other avenues you can go down to try to make yourself feel better. Parents aren't the only support system you have. I mean, you're gonna have friends, you have counselors at school who are really helpful, teachers. You have a lot of other options other than your parents. And if your parents are dismissive of your mental issues, just know that you're not making it up. I mean, the way you feel is the way you feel. And they may not see it now, but I'm 100% sure it's not like they want you to disappear. Like, they want you to be happy, and maybe that's just their way of not thinking about it. I think my mom feels like she's kind of responsible for my stress, so it's easier for her if she just says, oh, don't be stressed, like, rather than actually like talking to me about it. But that's just her. So
I've had a personal experience with my own parents, and specifically my mom. There was one point where I was harming myself, I was cutting, and the first instance, she did sort of panic, my mom, and, I was seeing a therapist, and after a couple months, I stopped, but then I, came back to it, and I remember it vividly. We were at Costco, it was at night in the evening, and she was putting gas in the car. I roll up my sleeves so I don't get gasoline on my sleeves, and she saw my cuts, and she pointed to them, and she was just like, again, son? And she rubbed my head, and she was just like, as if like, oh, like, I know you're going through this rough time, but it'll get better. And she just rubbed my head and walked away. And, at that moment, of course, I felt, very devastated that, some parents, there's parents out there who don't understand what we might be going through. And that's what we're here for. Just know that even if your parents at that moment might not understand what you're going through, and they might pass it off as something smaller than it really is, they love you from the bottom of their heart. If they lost you, that would be worse than anything in the world to them.
So I don't know if this is true because I don't have the statistics, but I think that a lot of Asian parents of their generation don't believe in mental health. Like, they think that, mental health, like, people with mental health are crazy. So for me, when I was in college, I told my mom, hey, Mom, I'm seeing a therapist or a counselor. And she's like, that's great. And she told all my uncles and aunts, like, oh, yeah, Leslie's in counseling. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe you just did that. Oh, God. Okay, anyway, so pretty much what I want to say is that from my experience, having gone through all the things I did, like, only at the point where I was actually hospitalized did my parents see that something was actually wrong. And it was a whole learning curve. Like, my mom didn't have any concept of what it meant because she didn't believe in mental illness, but she read books and she saw doctors, and really she went through this transformative period. And I think it does take a lot for someone with a closed mind to really understand that mental illness is an actual medical condition. And I actually talked to her yesterday about this, and this is what she said to me. She said, as a parent, I would like my child to tell me if there's something wrong to find a solution. That's the most important than anything else. Like, mention bad grammar. But anyway, without health, there's nothing. That's literally what my mom said. You know, they love us to death, or hopefully. But, you know, if anything, they want to be there to support you. And for me, like, honestly, there have been times where I felt like such a child where, like, I've been in bed crying, like my mom holding my hand and being like, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through this. But, you know, at first she didn't understand, but it's really a learning process. And, you know, your parents will accept you for who you are eventually. It takes time, but yeah.
I just want to say parents have a lot to learn too, that they panic and they get scared. Bottom line, they really want you to do well and they love you, but when they're faced with something that they don't know how to solve, sometimes that like avoidance kicks in. You're fine. You know, you have nothing to worry about, and it's really invalidating and often dangerous, but you know, there are resources for parents. I mean, Liz brought up a lot of good points, including about culture. You know, a lot of my work is about doing parenting education, especially for bicultural parents, that lots of parents, like my own, came from a country where they don't have the same kind of early intervention, short-term counseling, mental health care, all these things. They think like it's like crazy hospital or nothing, when most of us live in this middle area. And so a lot of it is just out of fear and ignorance. But parents can and do learn. And you would be amazed at some of the like touching conversations we've had at bicultural parenting classes. I was actually personally sort of shocked that we'd have Chinese parents kind of break down and cry and say, I know I'm not being supportive. I don't know how to talk to him. Nobody really listened to me in a reflective communication way, so I don't really know what to do. And it's like, well, there are people who can help. You know, I'm constantly giving out information. We get all these requests like, we need to know about answers to questions about transgender identity. Do you have anything in Spanish or Arabic? Yeah, I do. Do you have any information about bipolar disorder in Chinese? I do. There are resources. You know, parents can learn too, and they can get their own support to be better parents. So, you know, to maybe point them in that way. And I do think as a community, there's a little more, very slow, but developing awareness among parents too, that they have to do more to be supportive, because they are really worried about how you're all doing and they don't get it. And I think they're starting to get that they don't always get it.
Okay, so we're really short on time, so we have one last question. Maybe just two panelists can answer it. There are people who believe that seeking help from professionals and others is too much trouble to go through and will make the situation worse. What would you say to these people who try to cope by themselves? Do you think that it's okay to stay silent?
Wow, that's a lot. Okay, so I think that mental health is a huge thing that honestly, I don't think people can handle it alone, especially if it's something severe. Professionals will be able to tell you what exactly is going on and to actually diagnose you and set you up with the correct resources, right? So think of them as like a consultant, you know, you have an issue and they help you with it. So they help you with medication, therapy, tools that you can use, finding a support system, and any other resource to get you to be in a place where you can succeed in your life and not be unhappy. Another thing that I want to talk about earlier about the parent situation thing is there's this peer-to-peer support group that I like going to. It's called DBSA, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, and they have peer-to-peer support groups for people with a mental disorder, as well as family and friends groups. So you can have your parents, like my parents went to that and kind of heard and they talked about it, and it was really helpful for them. So definitely don't suffer alone. If you have the courage, go see a doctor, go see a therapist, and get help when you need it.
I see mental health as on a spectrum, right? So just like cancer, there's stages. Mental health, there's stages. And sometimes we talk a lot about the severe parts of mental health, the things that are really troubling and cause people to be in hospitals. There's another part of mental health that affects you day to day that you don't notice. And some of you have mastered coping with whatever issues that you have already. Whether that means, you're really distracted in class, you can't get your homework done, but if I put headphones in my ears, I can focus and do my work. That's you coping, that's you managing. Because the things that you're experiencing, maybe they're not affecting you to the degree that you can't do your work, but you've learned to do something to help you be successful in whatever it is that you're trying to do. So don't minimize the work that you're doing now to get yourself to be calm and chill and focused, because those are things that it takes other people a little longer to learn. So give yourself credit if you've mastered a skill to be able to make it through the day. But if you are having more trouble than you're able to solve, it's really important to connect with somebody that can provide that support and that backup to get you to a place that you can cope for longer periods of time than you were before.
So we have a lot of questions here that we haven't been able to answer during this session, but we want to emphasize that the point of this panel was not to have this group of people answer everyone's questions in 50 minutes. The point of it was that we encourage you guys to ask each other these questions. Go to your teachers, go to your counselors, go to your parents, and have these conversations on your own, because mental health is such a huge thing that we're going to have to cater to our entire lives, and it doesn't just end with this one event. So we want to encourage you guys, if you want to talk to our panelists anymore, they're going to be here at lunch. You can stay, bring your friends if they were in earlier periods and they want to stay back and talk, because if we just stop talking about this after this one event, then this whole thing was pointless, and it's up to us to be a part of the solution, not be a part of the problem. So we want to thank all of the teachers who brought their students here today. We want to thank you guys for listening, and let's give a huge round of applause to our panelists. So again, if you want to stay back for lunch, feel free. We will all be here. When you exit through the doors on your right, please drop off any unused index cards that you have in the boxes that we have here. Continue to talk to your parents, teachers, and counselors.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.